Hello, my name is Tobias Heiler and I'm one of the founders of BrainBoost. In this webinar, I will have a little interview with my brother and also co-founder of BrainBoost, and we will talk about the Brain Assistant. A little bit of history, how everything started, also some functions we really like, and also what we are currently working on. So have fun watching the webinar.
Yeah, hi guys, I'm Philipp, Tobi's brother, and happy to be here as a guest. Maybe it's not the biggest surprise that it's me, but we figured we should do a little bit of, getting into the history of Brain Assistant and kind of like telling you guys how it all developed and how we put in certain features, why we put them in, and so on. So hopefully you will enjoy this session. I think we'll start in a second with a few slides, just some regular intro, and then we'll dive into some questions that we prepared. So yeah, glad to see you guys show up here in such high number.
So regular starting screen. Well, first we have many different hardware manufacturers, and if you know a hardware manufacturer that could be a great benefit to our family, that would be great. Maybe also you might also tell a little about new hardware onboarding processes and maybe a new family member.
Actually, if it's okay, I will do it right now because I saw Walid that you are in the call. Walid from Wearable Sensing is in the call, and I'm happy to already announce that we are currently in the last steps of implementing the connection and testing the connection to the wearable sensing hardware family. So thanks for showing up, and soon we'll put your hardware on this slide as well. So first announcement for today. Soon we'll have more wearables.
Okay, so you see Philipp got the honor, and it's going to take a little bit to put that all on the website, but you see soon you will see there is a new hardware manufacturer. We will talk about a little more in detail about that in a second. So I'm going to share the screen one more time. Yeah, so today is the interview about the Brain Assistant development and future. Philipp made a great presentation about himself. I'll keep it very short. I mean, many of you know we have a neurofeedback clinic specialized in neurofeedback treatments, EEG analysis. We have an academy teaching, and we have the Brain Assistant software helping with all of these fields. We deal a lot with corporate customers and have a neuro store, obviously. So basically, we do everything or many features from teaching up to having great supply. But today, it's all about the software because it's an extremely important field. Having a good hardware then works together with the software. Our clinic was founded, and Philipp can tell more about it, in 2016, so almost 10 years. And the reason why now, let's go and let's ask Philipp a few questions about it. So, I have a few questions here for you. Maybe you can tell the first idea, like why would you as a medical doctor, or sitting next to you, but still, what would you as a medical doctor start to say, let's do neurofeedback, let's analyze brains, say, let's do software?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I started this with Toby together. So the only reason he's interviewing me is because he's the host of the podcast, of the webinar. So that's the only reason. I mean, he knows all this stuff, of course. So yeah, but just diving into that, in early 2016, I decided to fully specialize as a doctor on neurofeedback and QEEG, which is not very common in Germany and probably not in a lot of other countries either. So when I did that, I first started offering neurofeedback with existing hardware and software. And then I quickly, no offense, of course, to any manufacturer, but we quickly figured out that this is a little bit difficult to catch people with the games that were out there. So the games were the first thing where we felt like this should actually look a bit more like a game that people are used to and not so much like a game from the 90s that these kids don't even know anymore. So there's not even this retro feeling to the game. So that being said, we quickly started to get the idea of we want to develop our own games that are more shaped towards what our customers were asking from us. Especially in the German market, I would say they were requiring a little bit more calm games, a little bit less action and sparkling stuff, and a little bit calm games. And so, yeah, this was basically the first idea and first step. We developed games that were actually connected to with the like the Flash connection connected to existing EEG software. This was the first step in developing any kind of software, basically.
So as I recall correctly, there were individual games, like the games you used from the BrainAssistant, right? Like the Focus Master, like the
Focus Master Classic.
Focus Master Classic, exactly. Some people know it. And there were individual games on the desktop, right? So not on BrainAssistant, consisting of starting individual games. So like the actual games were actually installed individually on the desktop.
At the very beginning, we actually had just Flash games. So they were run usually through an interface of the existing EEG software that came with the device. But then we developed our own connection. And as you said, individual games that were just downloaded, basically. No installer, they were just downloaded and run. And then we had to have some little piece of software that was connecting the game with the EEG software that was not developed by us at this point. And this little task was actually meant to run only in the background. And so we felt like it was some sort assistant that you might need. And as you might guess, this is how the BrainAssistant got its name. It was actually just a background program that was running there, connecting an existing EEG software by a third party and our games. And nobody would ever think that, or we didn't think at that time that the BrainAssistant would get like it, or would become its own software. But that's what the name comes from. BrainAssistant only connects the game and the EEG software.
Yeah, so not even our own EEG software. So maybe it puts a little smile on your face the next time you start the BrainAssistant, that it all started with just having a game in the background, our assistant, basically. And then we use different software with all the bar graphs and the EEG recording. Well, now, if people see it, there are way more features. What happened next? So there were one game, there was one game, 2 games, 3 games. Maybe name like the first 3, 4 games. Maybe there's a little bit of a story to it, so people can maybe guess right now what would be the first or second game. And then what was the turning point where I said, you know what, let's do whatever with it. Sorry,
Yeah.
your interview.
No, it's all good. Yeah, so the first game, or one of the first games, was the Focus Master. This is why we still liked, Focus Master Classic. And then we remodeled it as a 3D version. So this is why we still like this game to show as an example from Neurofeedback. Very simple game, character flies up or down, and then you get extra points for some stuff. So this was the first game. And actually the second one was Dragon Bay. So Dragon Bay is one of our oldest games, which didn't look the way it looks like right now. It looked way different, not as fancy, and we didn't have as many levels. There were like 4 or so. But this was a first idea of a game with a controller and some interactive gameplay. So these are some of the oldest games. And then at some point, the idea came up that, hey, if you have only individual games, you will have to start every game and do the same settings like volume or graphics quality, or there wasn't even so many settings, but let's say like difficulty settings. You would have to do them all in each game individually every time you started. And this is when the idea came up to build the BrainAssistant as a UI software, so something that you can actually have on your monitor and where you can actually click stuff. And so it became basically a game launcher. It was there to set the settings for the games and also to quickly launch the games. And also this was a very important first part, to track the score in each game and make it possible to have the score, for example, to use the Neuro coins to buy characters in other games, not only in the game where you get the coins. So these were all the first ideas to put together at least a simple program for starting games, tracking points, and doing volume settings and graphics settings. This is when the BrainAssistant was born as BrainAssistant.
Okay, and then EEG data, training protocols, that was still happening in a different software, like third-party software. And yeah, that was basically the next feature.
Yeah, I would say like what you're, or the topic you're basically hinting at is then, and this is crazy to think about it now, I think at least, that it started, let's say 3 years ago, roughly 3-4 years ago. The idea like was born in our minds. We want to have as many processes automatized as possible. So we want to have as many things that annoy us as practitioners every day being done automatic or standardized or always like in a similar way, and they can automatically analyze and save, shared, and whatever. So with this idea of wanting this technology, we felt we need a way to deal with the data directly in the BrainAssistant, because then we have full control over what's happening. So instead of having EEG sessions like sprinkled across 2 or 3 third-party softwares, each with their own processes and their own export options or not export options or whatever. We felt like, hey, we need to unify this and put everything in the Brain Assistant so we can follow our mission or our idea that whatever hardware you're using, how many channels you're using, what kind of patient you're dealing with, the process is always the same. And we want to help you to do as many of these steps that you will do, like creating a report, analyzing stuff, creating brain maps. We want to help you that as many of these features as possible are being done without you even having to click a button. They will just automatically show up.
I think that's also something where hardware manufacturers said now watch and say, oh my God, it's many people have 2 different devices, one for QEG, one for training, and now with the Brain Assistant, they don't have to do an either or. I think it's also helping different hardware manufacturers that one clinic has several.
Yeah, like it can help clinics to actually unify their workflows to one software, even if you're using different hardware, and or the same hardware but like different devices or stuff like this. So the idea was to to build a software, and there we had to start from scratch. We had to go to a point where we actually, from the devices, we received the pure EEG samples and start doing all the data processing, like applying filters and cleaning the data, visualizing the data, and things like that. And by now, as you hopefully all know, the Brain Assistant can do all these things, and we are all working on improving them. We just recently launched a big performance update to make it run even smoother on newer computers. And so with this in mind, we at least set a certain base of being able to handle the data in a dynamic way, in the way we want to handle it, and put in like automatic steps and have an idea of like, controlling where the data goes. So that was basically the next step, and very important step. And I'm very grateful to manufacturers, again, to name you, Walid, for example, to jump into this idea, like open arms and a very open mindset, and get the idea that we have at least the option to have a unified software platform that supports several hardware devices, and also helping hardware manufacturers not having to deal so much with software anymore, because we focusing on software development. So, and I do not want to do hardware development. I do not want to do it. So
for the record, 2025, who knows what's going to happen?
No, never. I don't want to do it. And so I'm happy to split the load there, share the load, and kind of like do what we can do best.
Yeah, I see a few people that I know in the call. So I think this is, the academy teaching people doing as the mentoring hours. So often I see they're at a point, they have one device, and then they say, they used to, by using a different software, I'm kind of used to all that stuff. I don't know, I have new employees, I want to switch something I need now and upgrade. And this huge step causes trouble. This causes also trouble for the salesman and the hardware manufacturer, right? And this way, it's fair. It makes the place, or it makes the entire scene, I think, easier to jump, easier to use. And then you also save some brain power and like, no, today I want a dry cap electrode, and I want a sponge tip electrode. So I think this is also pretty cool, this unification, and that it's not a huge step to get different hardware, which I think every hardware manufacturer can benefit from.
I hope so. So far, it looks good.
Yes. Well, maybe, obviously we have a little bit of agenda, but what do you think right now? Because, we could talk forever about this. Right now, games, okay, but features, what features around games? What do you think is something you really enjoy working with at the moment?
Yeah. So I think like a big topic, as I said, is at some point being able to use all the data that we collect, or that every clinic or every practitioner collects, for certain analysis tools like AI-based machine learning or something like that. So I hope that or being able to record data in a standardized and very similar way is very important. So for me, having the flow option, the flow feature that gives control over recording data every time in a similar way, at least in a guided process. You can always manually skip or interfere, but it will help you to record process in a standardized way. So for us, having a clinic that runs 5 neurofeedback rooms at the same time, knowing that every initial assessment is done the same way and creates the same kind of data set with cognitive tests, with EEG, with questionnaires, is very important for me. And then, of course, the auto report feature that totally changed the way of, having to explain brain maps and stuff to people, to clients, going towards having a brief overview of the course, showing them which areas we'll be working on, and thus also helping them to understand more quickly how this will work. And one thing I want to point out is, if you collect the data in a standardized way like we do it here, we will work on many features that will benefit from that. So we, for example, when we started building our database, or when we started crawling our data that we have stored so far, it was a huge benefit that we could use data sets that were 2 years old, but they were stored in a proper way, labeled in a proper way, and we knew exactly what was going on. Same with neurofeedback sessions. And so this is maybe where I can tease one of our next features that we will bring out and that we are working on right now very heavily, is the multi-session analysis. So we will have a very smooth, intuitive, and cool way to analyze a bunch of sessions, for example, of one client. And we want to give you more than just having one brain map next to each other and saying this was before and this was after. We want to actually dive into the data, understand what is happening, where do we see improvements, where do we see changes. And this, of course, benefit from having very standardized data recording. That's one of the reasons why we automatically, for example, start a EEG segment when you start a certain application in feedback. This will give you the option even later to do multi-session analysis of clients that were there 1 year ago, because they have the labeled data. So you will know if a client that you saw a year ago benefited from doing the Focus Master game or not. So I would say this idea of having well-prepared, well-labeled, well-stored data, even if we do not harvest the full potential at this point, is something that's very important to me. And this is also why we follow this process very closely.
Yes, side note, the flow, if you're new, the flow is when you do a recording, automatic, 3 minutes eyes open, 3 eyes closed, and so on, procedure with the client that you can follow, she can follow on the screen. I also feel when I do mentoring sessions, it's also very good for, of course, the trainer, right, if you're new to it, but also for the client. You have a 10-year-old that might be a little, anxious, but maybe a little careful with you. And the more often you standardize, you get self-confident and this is the standard procedure. Don't worry, I've done 1 million times. And there's no room in a positive method for negotiation. You're very confident. The 10-year-old feels it. And when you want to repeat it, it's also very cool, because even if another staff member, for example, repeats it, everybody knows, even without talking to each other. We have many staff members, and if you have to stop, then still, for the 10-year-old will always be, I don't know you, but I know the routine, so okay, let's do this. So I feel...
I would even go one step further. The flow is built in a way that it can be completely controlled by an Xbox controller. So the client itself is the person that will be able to go through the flow by themselves. So this was very important for me, like what I told our developers, that this needs to be done by the client by themselves. So even if the staff member changes, they only have to do a signal check, at least at this point, before we replace them with AI or something like that. Not yet, but they only have to do this and hand the controller to the client, and the client will know what to do. And this gives us, for example, the option to do this workflow more often with more clients, because they can just do it by themselves, and it will always follow the same procedure. And this is one of the things that I like about it. We can do more full cap QEEG recordings with cognitive tests in more sessions without losing too much time, without having to explain too much, without having the option you do wrong segments or something like that. And all of this can be done in the same session, basically. So this is what I think is very interesting. We will have more time for the client's neurofeedback session, even if we do an assessment part at the beginning of the session.
Yeah, so you hear the flow is really famous, very popular. I also teach them a lot. You can also create your own flow. Of course, you can also do by hand recording, eyes open, eyes closed segments, that's it. But you see, really, we have a huge routine running, and this, I think, also helps the client a lot to feel, like also having a routine, and this really self-enables stuff. Yeah. What maybe in a second, you can also name maybe another feature, but I think generally also the segments, like when you start an application, it automatically creates a segment. It makes it really nice, right? When you start the Master Media Center, pilot training, will create a segment automatically, and all this automatization is something that you can either ignore, but many mentoring hours also use it to check out, okay, what's the boring game, also positive matter, right? Can be meant to be a little more challenging, or did it work well? So also this optimization analysis feature, this is something that is pretty beneficial.
Well, yeah, sorry, really quick. The thing is, I mean, and I don't want to make it too techy at this point, of course, but hopefully it's interesting for you guys. Let's say fragmented data is the worst thing that you could face when you're trying to analyze data. So having the idea of having, for example, individual segments sprinkled around on your hard drive, and they are only linked, for example, with a little, let's say, the name file is just the patient name is not even a really unique identifier or something like that. And they are organized in the structure of your Windows Explorer. This is a huge problem. So our idea was, and you can think of like basically every client, but every session is like a container that contains all this data. So having all the segments in the same EEG recording makes it much easier for you to understand that this data belongs together and it's not fragmented or something like that. So yeah, this is why I'm so excited about it, because this will mean that later on you will be able to handle this data in a whole different way than having to, look through your hard drive and figure out what belongs to who and whatever. Yeah.
So maybe you can also share a feature we're working on at the moment. But also a feature that many people ask me about is, and well, the answer is also write me an email afterwards, but cloud, so synchronizing data, since we talk a lot about data, backup and etc.
Sure, let's start with this. So as I said, we developed the local storage of the files. Like there's two options. Either you take the easy way, which means your software just basically dumps all the data on the hard drive in whatever way. We did not want to go this way. This is why sometimes it takes a little bit longer to develop a feature. But instead, I was talking about the container. So the fact that we already put all the data in a specific container means that this container can easily be shared between two computers. For example, if you copy it, like if you export it, like every BATA file is basically a container, and it can contain different things. So if you export it, put it on a USB drive, go to another computer, import it, then it will be there just as it was on the other computer. But of course, this also enables us to use cloud infrastructure.
Maybe one second. For some people that have been working with EG, then they might think, well, I can do this with an EDF file anyways. But the important thing is with our data files, our BrainAssistant file, you also save test results, you save comments, or the segments. So this is the more advanced copy-paste basically approach.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's good. So that means that we are basically ready for a cloud infrastructure, and we are already using a cloud infrastructure, and we are continuously rolling out cloud infrastructure to clients that are interested in it. So if you are, contact Toby. The main thing we are aware of is more legal requirements. So whenever you store any medical data in a cloud, even if it's not for a medical purpose, but it is bio data basically, then there are some requirements that you might be aware of. That means we always have to check how the legal requirements are for your country that you're active in. But if it works fine, then we are currently rolling out the cloud infrastructure. You can use it just for backup purposes. So you just back up your client base in a cloud, and so whenever your computer crashes or something, you can just open a new computer, log into your account, and it will automatically sync everything back to your account, which is very convenient. Or you can use multiple computers and it will sync everything between them. The reason why we're rolling this out so slowly is also we want to make sure everything works properly. There's nothing worse than a cloud sync that will destroy your data. It hasn't so far for us. We have been using it for 2 years, but we want to be really sure that it works well, because if it doesn't, then this is a big problem.
Yeah, so if you feel like, hey, this might sound interesting, I have 2 sites or 2 treatment rooms, it would be cool to synchronize them. Write an email to us, and we can do basically a soft launch or check out, because obviously, there might be firewall involved, etc. So we really want to make sure this works. We are therapists ourselves, so we know if you sit there in front of a computer and you just want to start and something's not working, how this feels, and so we want to really make it as comfortable for you as possible. Yeah, we're running towards the end, couple of minutes left. What is something maybe you can expect soon as well? What features? You don't have to name them, but what is something where you feel like this might be out there? This might be out there soon.
Always difficult to make announcements with developers because then it takes 2 months longer. But what we're currently working on, I mentioned the multi-session analysis. I'm very excited for this one, and we're also working on integrating options for biofeedback. So that means HRV analysis, breathing belt analysis, EMG analysis, and maybe even like skin conductance, something like this. The reason why this is taking a little bit longer is we want to make sure it's a good workflow for you guys. So we'll probably change it a bit that you at the beginning will choose if this is a session that will involve neurofeedback and biofeedback, and if this is the case, then you will get a suggestion on which channel to put the biofeedback sensors on. So we will have to go through this hardware by hardware because it's not as standardized as the EEG part of things.
Yeah, but for many hardwares, the training HRV, pulse, EMG already works.
Yeah,
just to want to make sure, right?
Yeah,
it's the BrainAssistant, it works. But yeah, you see, we're already looking at analysis, automatic reports. Okay, so you can also reach out to me.
We want to make sure it works well. That's basically it. And the next feature I want to mention is because it's something I really feel like we're missing is options for coherence and phase lag analysis. So this is something we're also working on, and hopefully soon we will release it. So we will have even more features next to like power spectrum and stuff. Yes, Matt is excited about it. Yeah. Again, there one of the difficulties is that we were doing a lot of research in how or if there is a standardized way to calculate it, and actually there is not. So there are many options how to do it, how to mathematically make sure that what we are measuring or what we are claiming we're measuring actually is what we're measuring. And so now we agreed on a certain process that we want, or a certain method that we would like to implement, and I think this will be also out soonish, beginning of next year.
Yeah, I mean, little side note, obviously we have different versions, like development version, beta version, and you have a live version. And so we've been testing basically all those features already for longer time periods. So we want to develop something in 2 weeks and then we throw it out there. So it looks very promising. Also, Matt, for you, it's not that we start with zero, so we already worked a lot with that. And we're excited where it all goes. So, then 1 second about questions. So just to round this up and then we can ask questions, I'm going to share my screen. Our system is from therapists. I think I want to stress this a lot, that we do all this ourselves. And for therapists, and the next webinar,
Next webinar is on the 15th of January, and the topic is still a big secret. If we get a cool feature done by then, we will introduce it. If we can't, then we won't. So yeah.
And thank you for being here today. We're completely on time. Perfect. So I wish you a good one, and I see you next year.
All right, guys. Take care. Thank you for listening.
Bye-bye.